I think the most extreme weather was, we were in Johnstown, and I think that was when it was like under -15. And I remember going outside and we were bundled up as good as we could, and it was just freezing. And we just did not want to be out in the open whatsoever as much as we could. So we were just freezing solid, but running around to get out of it as fast as we could. You know, those little wire bread ties that they give out in stores? When I first went to McConnellsburg, someone had twisted a couple together and made like this spider and something else that looked kind of like a scorpion. And that got me thinking. And so I started collecting these wire ties. And, oh man, this sounds so weird and geeky. But I collected them and started making things with them. I remember making flowers, and they were really cool. I made some dragons. And I think that was one of the skills that I picked up, just making stuff with wire ties. But they were really cool looking, if I say so myself. There was that period of time in my mission where I had difficulty working with one of the church leaders there. I don't believe that he liked me at all. I remember one of the main reasons that it was the case was we were teaching a non-member, and I felt that one of the things that we were asked to do wasn't what we needed to do. And like, I guess it was kind of a mess, because all of this was going on in about a week, and I was going back and forth. Well, maybe I should do this, because it was a simple thing, but I just kept feeling like that wasn't what I should do. And we just had conference, and one of the talks, the first one, kept blowing up in my mind. It's like, which way do you face? Which way do you face? And that was, I don't know if I'm describing this very good, but I was in probably the lowest place I've ever been. And I was so stressed out. But I remember talking to our mission president through the whole thing, and he was so helpful. And he was just like, okay, go talk to your church leader, try to work things out. This is what you do, keep doing these things. And I remember while this was going on, I was praying and I was fasting, like, what on earth am I supposed to do? But I kept going back to that feeling where I knew that what I was asked to do, I wasn't supposed to do, and that I felt the Spirit telling me to do something else. And I had been jumping on both sides of the line, trying to work things out, to compromise. But I knew in the end, after having fasted and prayed for this thing, I was just having such a hard time. I remember going through the stress book, which was really helpful at the time, and writing down the pros and cons of the whole situation, the two different decisions. And remember this talk coming to mind, and knowing that I'd felt the Spirit, I made the decision then to do that. And I remember after making that decision, saying a prayer, and just felt like the weight was gone. I knew it was still a bad situation. I still had to work with this leader, and he didn't like my decision, but I knew that I'd made the right choice at that point. And I remember there were some amazing things that happened in this area while this is going on. I remember in one of my most difficult times where I was just stressed out of my mind, it was a P-Day. And we were just sitting in this parking lot because we couldn't do anything. We just didn't want to do anything. It was so bad. And I remember trying to think of what to do, seeing this man that had something of a familiarity in his countenance. I don't know who the man was or what, but I remember him walking towards our car, and it almost seemed like he knew who I was, and he had a glow about him just in his countenance, just a happiness and a glint in his eyes. And I don't remember if he waved, but I remember he looked straight at me and he smiled and he walked by. And now thinking about it, I wish I had talked to him. I don't know who he was, but I wish I'd talked to him. And I remember that moment being important because I was in such a low point. And it was like, whoever that man was, whether he was a messenger or whatever, I don't know. But that moment proved to me that that God was mindful of me because I needed that at that moment. And I remember just everything we talked to Mission President about. We probably call them at least once every day. I remember him coming up from the mission office to sit down with both of us to help us work out the situation. And we were both transferred in the end, but it was really good. And I remember when our bishop found out that we both had to leave, that at least when he heard that I had to leave, he cried. And that was something that was really touching to me because he was a really good man. So yeah, that was probably the hardest experience I had. One of the greatest lessons I learned is that somewhere in our lives there comes a time where we have to figure out which way we face. And the consequences of that action, either we make the decision to go with the flow, which makes it easier on us, but breaks us down inside. Or we make the decision that we know is right, which doesn't make it easier, but gives us a courage and a strength from within. And I remember feeling that strength when I finally made that decision, because I knew I still had the stress of having to deal with it, but knowing that I was better for making that decision. And that taught me a lot, that even when we make the right decisions, a lot of times there's not going to be stress or no stress, or hardship or not. But sometimes, no matter what we choose, we're going to have hard things. And sometimes it's when we make the wrong choice that we avoid those hard things. But I think that was one of the best lessons I learned. Which way we face to make that decision. Another lesson I learned was there was a period of time on my mission where I just didn't feel the Spirit. And I was having a really hard time. And I remember praying about it. I was like, I don't feel the Spirit. What should I do? And I remember during this time receiving the impression that no matter what, even if we couldn't feel the Spirit, that He was there all the time. And there were a lot of times after that where I continued to not feel the Spirit, but I remembered that lesson. And I knew that He was there, that I could still talk to Him. He could still help me through it, even if I couldn't feel it. There was calamari squid rings. They were supposed to be fried. I think the worst part was it wasn't really cooked. Then there was frog legs. First time I had that, those were actually good.